Today we're talking about September 11th, 2001. This is not a gotcha video, not a conspiracy safari, not a spectacle. We're focusing on human beings, confusion, courage, and how one morning rewired the modern world. And if you lived through it, you don't need me to prove it happened. You need a language for what it did to people. The Tuesday that didn't know. There are days in history that arrive like thunder, loud, obvious, cinematic. And then there are days that begin like Tuesday. Coffee, routine, traffic reports, a half-buttoned shirt, a meeting you don't want to attend, a classroom where someone is trying, heroically, to teach fractions to children who have declared war on mathematics. And then the screen breaks. Not the TV screen, not literally, the idea of the screen. Because modern life runs on an agreement. The world is chaotic, but the chaos stays over there, behind glass, on the news. And that morning, the over there moved into right here, in real time, on live television, with anchors who didn't have scripts, only voices that kept cracking as they tried to keep sounding like adults. That's the shock factor of 9/11. It wasn't just an attack, it was a live broadcast rupture of the modern world. And when that rupture happened, something else happened too. Ordinary people, people who woke up thinking they were background characters, became the story. The map of this story. To go deep without getting lost, we'll follow three threads, like three camera angles in one film. The screen, how the world watched in real time. The street, what people did in stairwells, offices, sidewalks, and smoke. The sky, the systems trying to respond to the unthinkable. And then we'll end with a fourth thread, the after, security, surveillance, war, trauma, memory, and the world that followed. I'll use a little humor, but only the kind that honors human awkwardness and survival, because sometimes the most respectful thing you can do in a tragedy is remind people the living still have lungs. The screen, when the world becomes a witness. To understand why 9/11 hit like a psychic asteroid, remember this. It was a world before TikTok, before everyone carried a camera crew in their pocket. But it was a world with 24-hour news. And that morning, the news didn't feel like news. It felt like a window. Many people who watched live share the same thought. I kept waiting for someone to say, okay, cut, reset, we'll do that take again. Because our brains love two things, patterns and endings. Live television gives you neither. It gives you reality, raw, unfinished, unscripted. The 9/11 Commission report describes the day as a relentless, unfolding timeline, events moving fast, systems scrambling, information incomplete. And viewers felt that incompleteness in their bones. In modern life, we're used to buffering. Videos buffer, apps buffer, even emotions buffer. But that day, no buffering, just now. The street, human core. Now we go to the most important part of the story, not geopolitics, not policy memos, people. Inside the World Trade Center, thousands weren't thinking about history. They were thinking, is this a fire? Is this an accident? Should I go back for my bag? Where's the exit? Why isn't my phone working? Why is the stairwell so crowded? Why is someone helping a stranger like they've known them forever? Here's a truth that doesn't get enough airtime. In disasters, heroism is often structurally simple. Not emotionally simple, but practically simple. Heroism looks like holding a door, giving directions, keeping panic out of your voice, lending shoes, carrying someone who can't walk, going up when everyone else is going down. the National Institute of Standards and Technology investigation documented how unprecedented the impact damage and the fires were, and how extreme the evacuation conditions became. But survivor stories rarely start with engineering. They start with a person. A woman told me to follow her. A man kept making jokes so we wouldn't break. Someone carried my coworker down the stairs. A stranger held my hand because I was shaking. That's the human core. Small decisions stacking into survival. And then, first responders. The loss among emergency responders in New York was staggering. Hundreds among the dead. And the hardest truth to say out loud is this: they ran towards something everyone else's instincts screamed to run from. That's not movie courage. Movie courage has a soundtrack. Real courage often sounds like, "Okay, let's go." A breath. If you need a second, take it. This story is heavy because it's human. Okay, back to the threads. The sky, systems under stress. One eerie feature of 9/11 is how it forced modern systems, aviation, emergency response, communications, into a scenario they were never designed to run. That morning, the Federal Aviation Administration initiated the first ever unplanned shutdown of U.S. airspace. Thousands of aircraft were ordered to land as soon as practical. Think about that scale. Thousands of moving objects, each filled with human lives, each needing somewhere safe to go. If coordinating dinner with 3 friends is hard, imagine coordinating thousands of aircraft across a country-sized sky. This wasn't only tragedy, it was a stress test of modernity. Flight 93, courage without a camera. And now we come to a story that proves something essential. Even when people are afraid, they still choose each other. The Flight 93 National Memorial timeline preserves the complexity, conflicting reports, rapid decisions, uncertainty in real time. But what history remembers isn't a plot, it's a choice. People who didn't wake up planning to be heroes made a choice under terror that changed what could happen next. We can say it plainly, that decision stands as one of the most extraordinary acts of civilian courage in modern American history. No capes, no slow motion, just people becoming more than passengers. The numbers, an anchor. We say this carefully. Numbers matter, but numbers can flatten what shouldn't be flattened. The National September 11th Memorial and Museum records that 2,977 people were killed in the attacks across New York, Arlington, and Pennsylvania, excluding the perpetrators. Within New York City alone, the National Institute of Standards and Technology documents 2,749 deaths in the World Trade Center disaster area, including hundreds of emergency responders. These are not statistics. They're missing seats at tables, unanswered phones, birthdays that arrive with a shadow. The after, a new era. If 9/11 was a rupture, what grew in the crack? A new era. Security becomes daily life. The Transportation Security Administration was established in November 2001. That's why airport security today doesn't feel like an event. It feels like weather. Government reorganization. The Department of Homeland Security was created in 2002, consolidating major security functions. Laws and civil liberties. The USA Patriot Act, signed in October 2001, remains debated. Security versus privacy, safety versus freedom. Meaning the after of 9/11 isn't just history, it's still policy, still courtrooms, still dinner table arguments. Health and long-tail consequences. The September 11th Victim Compensation Fund exists because the aftermath wasn't only emotional. For many, it was physical. Some tragedies don't end. They echo through lungs, through families, through decades. Why it felt like the birth of the 21st century. People say 9/11 changed everything. It sounds like a cliché until you unpack it. It changed how nations view threat, how cities plan emergencies, how people think about safety, how governments balance privacy and security, how media covers catastrophe, live, constant, unfiltered, how fear can be politicized, how identity can become a target. And it changed something quieter. It taught a generation that history doesn't always send a warning. History can just walk into your Tuesday. The most important reframe. Zoom out far enough and 9/11 becomes geopolitics, wars, legislation, intelligence failures, strategy. Zoom in close enough and it becomes a stairwell, a phone call, a hand on a shoulder, a firefighter's last decision, a stranger saying, "Come with me," a passenger saying, "Let's move." And here's the truth I want to leave you with. The world broke on live television, but people stitched each other together in real life. That's the human core. Not because humans are always good, but because in the worst moment, enough people were good on purpose. A breath of humanity. Survivors sometimes mention something strange. Your brain notices ridiculous details. A tie flapping in the wind, a vending machine still humming, a perfectly normal email popping up. Friendly reminder, team meeting at 10. And you're standing there thinking, "Sir, read the room." That's not disrespect, that's humanity. Sometimes the mind hands you a tiny absurdity and says, "Here, hold this, it'll keep you from falling." If you were alive then, you probably remember where you were. If you weren't, you inherited the world it created. Either way, the challenge is the same. Remember without turning tragedy into entertainment. Learn without turning grief into a weapon. Honor the dead by protecting the living, their rights, their dignity, their humanity. If you want, drop a comment, not about politics, not about theories, but about human moments you remember. Kindness, confusion, bravery, help. Because history isn't only what powerful people decide. History is also what ordinary people do when the screen breaks and the world becomes real. And on that day, ordinary people became the story.